how are you able to actually leave the 9 to 5 culture and do what you want to do? Like, I mean, so many people talk about doing it, but I like talking to people, like real people like yourself. Like, what happened? What was the shift? Sometimes I think it can be, events that happen in our life or boiling points we reach. What was it for you that made it like actually happen?
Yeah, I like the boiling point reference because I feel like that's definitely a part of that kind of shift for me of when it happened. And as I think about just my whole life growing up, I kind of always had a feeling that I would have a hard time just working underneath people if they weren't exactly what I aligned with. And I kind of figured that out through school and many different things, coaching things, all kinds of stuff. And so as I got older and kept working for other people and trying to do the best that I could do at every job, I wasn't feeling, the gratification that I felt comes with that really hard work. And I've always been really proud of my work ethic and
Mhm.
feel like I physically work harder than most women in my field. And I just am very proud of that. And so I didn't feel like I was getting that recognition in a lot, and I would look for it in a lot of other places. And I do think that that's where a lot of other things might have come into play as well. But yeah, I think one day I kind of remember getting a little book and writing down like what my business would look like if I had one. And I was working for another company who trained dogs and boarded them and did all kinds of stuff. And I was working underneath multiple people who did that, and I never really loved the way that they did it necessarily. And I'd go to another organization and another company, and I'd like it for a while, and then I would not love something they were doing with the dogs, or feeling like we're kind of just taking money and not really giving quality care. And so I just kind of started writing out what my dream business would look like. And one day I had enough. There was too much going on at the place, and people were in danger, dogs were in danger. It was just too much. And I decided that moment that I remember getting offered like a really big raise to stay that day too. And I was like, I appreciate it. I hear you. I actually would love that. But I'm just gonna go do this. And it was really scary. And it was, probably the scariest thing I've ever done. And when I look back on it now, I just kind of laugh at that time because I was so freaked out. But like now we're 3 years in, and I love what I do, and I can't imagine working for another person at this time. Maybe someday that will happen again. But it was just this leap of faith of just like, can't do this anymore. And knowing that I just was kind of probably on that path of needing to kind of have my own authority when it comes to working for myself. And so, yeah, that's how we got
Yep.
here.
So yeah, combination of the boiling point, but then would you say like it's kind of like there's this deeper aspect of yourself that knew you didn't know how, but somehow, some way there was something else.
It was like an instinct, and something I've learned more recently is when I don't listen to my instincts, bad things happen, and that happens a lot with dogs. You don't listen to your instincts and something happens, and so a lot of working with dogs has taught me things about myself, and that's what I try to teach other people, is that we can kind of learn from them. But
Mm.
yeah, it just kind of made me realize that, like, yeah, I can just do this for myself and feel good for myself, and I can, it was just this whole mind shift that happened. And it was definitely a combination of those things for sure.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who maybe they work? It's not maybe they don't work in the field that you work in. We do want to talk more about dog stuff because I love dogs. But what would you say to someone who maybe they're a tradesman or something, and they work for some other company, and because they haven't historically been able to get their own work, and it's same thing, man. They don't really like having someone else tell them what to do and dictate their day. What would you say to them?
I remember having the fear in the beginning of, even no matter what my trade was, just knowing that it's a big risk to just go out there and try to do this on my own. And in the beginning, I wasn't making a whole lot, and I had to hit the ground running, and I had to basically beg people to let me work for them. And it really is this mind shift of needing to ask for help, which I learned a long time ago when I, went to rehab almost 10 years ago. And I think that did snowball into kind of going, okay, like, I just need to ask for help for everybody right now. And I did. And, I borrowed money from some family members and all kinds of stuff. And just, nothing a lot. I really did it mostly all on my own. But I need a couple $100s here or something. I would try to figure it out. And pay everybody back when I could. And now I just got to the point where I had enough clients or whatever that I could do what I needed to do. But there was probably, I would say, like a 6 months to a year period where it was just hoping that this was going to be something, and just kind of
Mm.
knowing that I had to put one foot in front of the other, and that And I still have that to this day where even though I'm more successful in my business, there's still times where I'm like, can we do this? And I'm like, you just keep putting the one foot in front of the other and we see. And that's kind of the mindset I had to have, just leaving that. And you really just have to, I think, want it. I feel like it's very similar to making any life change. And other people can tell you and you can kind of feel it. But there is just that shift that happens one day where you're like, yeah, fuck this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's worth noting, that we were talking about before we started recording the landscape we're in now in terms of just business, like throughout the whole globe, throughout all facets of thought. Internet content is like the leading deal now. I mean, I know a company like Gucci. This is just the ones off the top of my head. Like, I know that they would not have the share that they have, or the volume of influence in the market that they have currently, without having individual influencers as a part of their payroll. Like, if they didn't have individual influencers, it'd be shot. But like when we were growing up, and you get to the boiling point with our adolescence and our conditioning, you go, well, the only way that I can make a business is with my hands, right? And like I got to build something. And there's things that are fun and aligned, like what you do. But there's other stuff that a lot of us, we feel like we're boxed in these holes. We have to do these certain things, because that's what we've always known to be possible. But today, if you really look at it, like, dude, if you are okay with getting on a camera and you stick with it, it's not about how many views. It's about the right views.
100%.
That's it.
I learned that very early on, and I put a lot of effort and money into just like marketing and my content and all that stuff. But in the beginning, I wasn't super comfortable showing my face, so it was just finding ways that I could still make content without doing that. So you can be creative and sometimes not even do that. You have to sometimes work yourself up to that point, but you can be
Mhm.
creative, and there's totally ways that you can make great content of whatever it is that you're doing and share
Yeah.
it with people. For me, I had to delegate a little bit because it was really hard for me. So I actually hired my niece. She was one of my first big paid employees, and she is what I invest the most in because she helps run all my social media and make it beautiful and help run my YouTube and things that I don't have enough time to do when you are just running a business. So it's one of my biggest recommendations to people is if you can't afford a marketing team, find one person that you can work with and have them
Mhm.
help you out with it, because it has been invaluable to what we do. And a lot of people find us just through happen to be one click, and we don't have a huge following, but a lot of my stuff comes from seeing one person who worked with this dog online or something like that. They see it and they want that. And it is definitely a huge help. And part of the times for sure is just kind of getting into the social media thing, which kind of does suck.
Well, any resistance to the face on the camera is really just an unconscious concern of what other people will think. And the only reason that's there is because it's been conditioned into us. And in reality, anybody that's going to judge you is going to judge you anyway, no matter what you do. And
Yeah.
furthermore, they judge themselves equally or more. And so it's like, fuck it, like, and the more you do it, the more you're comfortable with it, and the more you learn about yourself. I think that videoing yourself once a week, whether you put it on the internet or not, is the most powerful thing anybody can do. I
Yep.
think that one time a week, go for a walk in nature, talk about whatever the fuck's on your mind. Don't have a plan, just go out there and walk and talk for 20 minutes and save it in your phone. Or get a YouTube channel and mark them all private. You don't got to make them public. But if you do make them public, holy shit.
Well, it
Some
does kind of bring me to this thought that kind of comes up of like, when you're comfortable with yourself in that way, which I've had to learn over the last couple of years, is kind of just getting comfortable talking to myself really and
Yeah.
seeing that back and not being like, "Ooh, I don't love that" or whatever, and
Mhm.
just being like, "Okay, well, we messed up with that, but like we can make it better here or whatever." And
Mhm.
I really have just gotten a lot more comfortable with myself, and I think that my clients can also see that and feel that, and that's something that
Mhm.
totally translates into me getting business. And so people can see when you're comfortable with yourself, and I do think that that's a big thing into becoming your own, whatever it is that you're doing. And
Mhm.
people want to know that you believe in yourself and that all those things. And so I think that is a really cool skill that people have that they might not know they need to learn.
Yeah, and it's like the more you let go of the any of the unconscious fears you go along as you do it, as you get used to seeing yourself and stuff like that, it's like the more you discover about yourself and the more you tend to attract people into your world that, you wouldn't have attracted otherwise.
Totally.
And man, I've met so many cool people. I've met a lot of people that have become clients of mine, but man, I've met so many cool people like yourself. I'm just learning about your business. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I had this guy, Dr. John DeMartini, on my podcast, who's like a human behavioral expert, dude. And he's been on like a lot of like big name interview places and shit. And I had him on that's fucking nuts. Like,
That's
not,
awesome.
I don't get like crazy amounts of views or whatever, but like I have fun with it,
Yeah.
And I think that the more that we just do what we want and somehow bring content into that, So let me just bring us back just for a second, and we'll go somewhere else fun. But the idea about the handyman, I actually recently was talking to a guy about this dynamic, and so on one side of the coin, obviously it's all mindset. There's plenty of different things that one could do as we've learned throughout our adolescence in terms of in community and finding work and yada yada, scaling your business. But man, if you're good at it and you know what you're doing, make some videos about it. And you don't
Yeah.
even got to be talking. You could just be in the background working on a fucking like a kitchen or some shit, and it's just you over there hyperlapse, and you write a text over it, and that's your only mode of content. But you keep doing that. Hey, you're not gonna have to work for anybody if you stick with it and you get good at it and you try, especially
100%.
that type of content. The type of content I do is a little bit different. But if you do that, like I had a client who he has a farm, and I was like, dude, if you just go live while you're in the background doing whatever, and just go live 3 hours a day on TikTok, I mean, I bet you some shit's gonna happen that's good for you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Which is actually something I've been meaning to do, which is go live on TikTok. It's just something that I'm learning to be comfortable with all these new facets of
Yeah.
everything. And we're just figuring it out as we go. And my marketer girl goes, okay, we got to do this now. And I'm like, okay, figuring
Well,
it out.
let me be the first to tell you, like, or one of the people to tell you, like, there's something to that, the live part, right? Like, I've gotten to a space where I'm incredibly comfortable with myself, and it's not just from creating content; it's from the internal work as well, right? But got to that space where I'm really, really comfortable by and large. Um, Going live on TikTok's a different thing, though, because now, like when I'm with someone live, whether it's one person or a few people, I see responses, I see body language, I know what I'm working with, But if all you get is just the occasional blah, 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 and you're on your own, it's like it's not natural, So I'm
Yeah.
training that muscle. So believe me, I get it.
It's, yeah,
That one's
it's
different.
training all these new muscles for sure. There's a lot of learning curves when it comes to this whole social media thing. And like even with like YouTube, we've just been putting all long form content on there, even things that we probably wouldn't normally post up, and we were getting tons of, comments and subscribers and things we just weren't even kind of expecting. And so sometimes you just have to try a new avenue and see if it brings you
Yeah.
something. But yeah, there's definitely so many ways to like bring light to a business if that's what you're trying to do, no matter what it is. If you're being a handyman, if you're working with dogs, if you want to do lashes, whatever. And what I see most people do when they fail is just not believe in themselves, and
Mhm.
it is hard to do. And if you don't have someone that supports you, that can be tough. I've always kind of had someone in my corner, whether it be my mom, a partner, a friend, but I also try to surround myself with people who are like that, and that's kind of my lifestyle. So
You nailed it, dude. I'm glad you said that. We've been conditioned to fear failure when in reality, failure is the most information rich data stream that exists. And all of the successful people before us that knew that, failure is a part of the recipe. And it's like,
100%.
you
Yeah.
want that. You want to take chances that you're not certain about and see what
Most
happens.
big companies were started in garages, and
Mm-hmm.
when you think of that thought, they just had to stay consistent and believe in themselves most of the time. And yeah, like
Yeah.
money is a part of that, but I do think that's a manifestation, and I think you have to really just believe that it's going to come to you, and then it will, and by
Yeah.
no means I'm not rolling in dough or anything, but I'm much more financially stable than I've ever been in my life, and I
Yeah.
get to do things that I probably wouldn't have gotten to do even a couple years ago. And that's my, continuous growth. And I don't really look for the monetary thing. I'm just looking for life to be more, abundant in every way, and that's just the kind of
Yeah.
goal that we have. It doesn't have to be anything set on a number or anything like that.
Yeah. I'm glad you touched on that, the belief aspect, because man, it's crazy though, right? Like if you came to me 10 years ago and you said, hey man, what you believe in your mind and your subconscious mind is incredibly important. I would have looked at you like, get out of here, man. What are you talking about?
Probably the same.
But holy fuck, is it important, And, I bring this book up a lot, and it also sits here for a reason. But, the principles in this book, if you just go to AI and, hey, what are the top 10 principles of Think and Grow Rich, and then apply those principles in your life and stick with it. There's a part in the book Napoleon Hill says, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says something to the effect of, uh, drawing or hitting home how powerful these principles are. And then he says, if you do this stuff and it doesn't give you the transformation you're looking for, it's not the fault of the principles. It's you didn't do it right. And I'm,
100%.
and I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing. I'm paraphrasing what he said. He probably said it a lot better than that.
Yeah,
But
no, it's like it reminds me of when I went to rehab 10 years ago, and you go to AA and they give you the 12 steps, and some people half-ass the steps, and I really just remember digging into them and just being like, no, I actually want whatever these people have, that are doing better and whatever, and I did them, and I remember watching people who did not, and they still, generally have a tough time in life, and I have continuously progressed in a way where I feel like I get stronger and healthier, and I work on my unconscious and subconscious mind and all of that stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, 10 years ago, you would have told me about any of that, I probably would have laughed pretty hard.
yeah, because we were conditioned not to see it.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
but it's not on us to get upset at society. There's plenty of people that are doing that. And I think it's the nature of existence. I mean, in order to grow, the seed must be planted. In order for there to be an ascent, there must be a descent.
Yeah.
And everybody's got their own flavor of that. It's just when do we recognize? You were pointing out earlier, the idea essentially that when you have resistance in your world, well, you're bringing that forth somehow. And so, look at that and see what
Yeah,
happens.
I have like a thing I'll say in my life of like, oh, there's this chaotic energy happening right now. But whenever that's happening, it's because I'm usually not really diving deep into what's really bothering me or something like that, and it's always when I look back at that time, I go, okay, well, maybe could have just used a therapy appointment or something to dig through that at that time. Maybe therapy was a little late that week.
Okay, awesome. So, man, I love everywhere we're going, and we could fill up a lot of time, I can tell. So in the journey of going from 9 to 5 to running your own business, let's say to getting to the point in running your own business where you're like, okay, this is working now, right? Like from not having it to that point, what would you say was one of the biggest challenges in that road?
Really, my own brain, I think, because I have dealt with, anxiety and depression. And even after getting sober, I still just struggled a lot with just feeling happy on a daily basis. And I would have times where I'd be happier, but, I generally I would be like more high functioning depression, anxiety, but it'd still be there. And it would be something that still kept me back from just really like living my best life and trying to, I had social anxiety, and I could only work certain jobs that I felt like wasn't gonna, make me be exposed to something like this or that or whatever. And it kind of kept me very limited in a lot of ways. And it wasn't really until I started to, work on those things and kind of, therapy was a part of that. Eating a better diet was a part of that. Trying to figure out, if I had an autoimmune symptom, what is that coming from? How do we address that? And so I just kind of started working on all those things. And of course, the mind started to follow a little bit. And then it really did become easier, I feel like, to make the decisions that were just more true to myself in all kinds of ways. Relationships, my business, all that stuff. It just really became so much easier to just go, oh, actually, this is what I need and want. And I actually don't need any of that other stuff. You
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just feel like you have to have those things or you're not going to be okay. And I felt like I needed this to be stable and this to be whatever, I have, abandonment issues, didn't want this person to leave me, whatever it was, and
Mm-hmm.
so it really wasn't until I just started kind of putting that holistic piece together of everything, the mind, body, brain, all the things that go together, making sure I'm doing a daily yoga practice. A lot of meditation was involved. I did some retreats where I just went off and just tried to figure some stuff out with some random people. Sometimes it was great, sometimes it was weird. And all those things kind of have compounded to make me a person who feels like when I have the depression or anxiety pop up, I can go, okay, well, this is a symptom of this, and this is why this is happening. It doesn't feel as consuming or like I'm not able to guide my own path anymore.
Yeah, man. The power of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and that's the other thing too, is seeing, looking it up and seeing that behavioral psychology shows that our beliefs, basically dictate our thoughts, which dictate our actions, which dictate our results, and I think there's maybe another layer to that, but that's the general flow of it, right? And
Yeah.
it's, all the quotes of the past, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right, things like that. I used to be like, all right, that's just some dude that got some money and he's saying some shit. You know what I mean? But it's like,
Yeah.
no. There's, holy shit. There's something. As a Man Thinketh. I forget the author of that book. That's also a great short book. Um, but yeah, it's one thing to read it and another thing to bring it into your life and then see what happens when you do. And so what I'm hearing from you is that as you brought in these concepts into your life and integrated them into your life, your experience in the 3D world improved.
100%. It's been a complete change. And like even 2 years ago, so much has changed because I just continuously put that work in, and a couple years ago, I still felt like I was on a pretty good path and feeling a lot better. But even still looking back then, I was still struggling with so much, and probably still am when I look back at this time now. But it just feels like it's so much easier to manage even when big things are happening and sad things are happening and the business is struggling or whatever. It doesn't ruin my whole life or crumble everything. I still know everything's going to be okay, which that generally has not been my mindset most of my life. We're going to die.
Yeah. You've cultivated a level of emotional resilience that former versions of yourself would not even know what that meant
Yeah, a lot of that
or
too, I
felt
will
like.
say, has been just looking inward, being comfortable with myself, but and truly loving myself. And I've always been someone who says that I do really love myself, but I had to take it a step notch, further and really, really look at every part of me, things that come from my dad, my mom, things that I don't like from other people, whatever, and really make sure that I love every part of that person. And that's been the biggest journey I feel like I've done over the last couple of years. And I feel
Mhm.
like that makes it a lot easier to give myself kind of grace whenever there is anything that I probably normally would beat myself up about or something.
Yeah, man, dude, resentment and forgiveness are like, those two layers are important.
Yeah, I've done a lot of forgiveness lately.
The amount
That's been
the
that.
amount that we have unconscious resentment towards parents, whether they're still here or they're not still here, man, there's so much value in
It's a
going there.
lot. It's something I still dig up in therapy all the time. I think I go like once a month now, but I love, we do the EDMR tapping therapy. So we'll tap and kind of dig in, and I'll remember things I don't even remember from my childhood kind of pop up. And it's
Hmm.
really is it's almost a frustrating experience when it's happening because you don't want to be reliving anything like that or dealing with any of that stuff. But once you do feel so much better. You really do have to sometimes work on the inner child stuff or things that your parents did to you when you were kids. And it might even be something so stupid of someone pushing you in a pool and feeling like you were, your trust was broken or whatever. Or it could be big things, but all those things are things that matter and make you who you are. And I've been just trying to really work on all those things and feel like, okay, if I have this feeling, where does that come from? Does this come from a time when I was a kid and didn't feel safe or something like that? And it's much easier to navigate when you can acknowledge, okay, this is why that happens. I'm not just crazy.
Hmm. So I feel compelled to speak on this because when I work with people, this is something that comes up a lot, and I think that we can easily get lost. Sometimes we find it quickly. We're like, well, where did this come from? Oh, you know what? When I was whatever, that makes sense. That's there, But I feel like for a lot of us, a lot of times we could drive ourselves batty trying to figure out where it came from, and most of the time, I think that the most advantageous way to go about it is just look at it as we are consistently working with and or reparenting ourselves, right? Our central nervous system, the whole deal. And I think just a simple recipe of like acknowledge, allow, redirect, gratitude, right?
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
hey, I know something's going on in my body right now, and that's okay that that's there. I know some shit happened back in the day, but it's okay. We're good now. And hey, just because this happened doesn't mean blah blah blah. And then redirect. And the more we do that, not to take away from the value of going there and really diving deep and getting some of those tears out and really having a cleansing where you're crying and you can't breathe through your fucking nose, because that shit's important too.
Some of those
You
need to
know,
happen. Yeah.
yeah, that shit's important too. Joy is the mother of all emotions, but she doesn't like to hang out at your house unless all of her children are welcome. One of
Oh.
my favorite lines I've ever heard. Favorite
Yep.
lines I've ever heard. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, anyhow, we can wrap that up. I just went down that. We went a lot of places, a lot of good places, but the hypothetical road of someone in that position. You know, the cornerstone here, I think, is that it all starts with thought, because literally it all starts with thought and our neuroplasticity. But as
When you
far as
mentioned like the parasympathetic nervous system, and that also is like definitely, like you said, like sometimes you can get caught up in trying to figure out what's bothering me, and sometimes it is just slowing down and taking a deep breath, and like you said,
yeah,
like redirecting, and like that
yeah,
is sometimes that's all you need to do in those moments, and that can bring you so much more peace, and that's all
yeah,
that's needed to happen.
yeah, and then the more you do that, the less, when things happen that evoke a physiological response, the less they feel like, a plane going over your house and shaking the house, and the more it feels like a plane in the distant sky or whatever that you just
Mhm.
see. But hey, it's going to be gone in a little bit. It's all right. It's there. The world's okay. There's a plane. But that's way better than shaking the house.
Slowing my system down, I think, was one of the biggest parts of just the holistic process of healing, because I just move
Mhm.
fast and think
Yeah,
fast and talk fast, and
yeah,
trying to slow all of that down has been a huge thing of just kind of healing myself, because you do, when you're moving that fast and everything, your frequency raises, everything's crazier, and you do have that chaotic energy kind of come into your life. And a lot of what I
yeah.
do with dog training is slowing the dogs down, and that is
Sure.
a lot of what I've had to learn.
Yeah, yeah. Do the same things, techniques on yourself, right? So in the realm of dog training, out of all the things that you do, what are the three most favorite things out of what you do for you?
I would say, um, I love dogs in general, but I love making them feel better in their body, and that's really, it is probably similar to, because of things that I've gone through, and now that I generally do feel better in my body, I want to be able to teach others that.
Mhm.
And yeah, when there's a dog that's just, anxiety ridden or aggressive or fearful or any of that stuff, it just, it does something to me to help them bring their sympathetic, parasympathetic system down and all of that stuff. And so one of the main things is just helping dogs find their calm state. That's like one of my favorite things to do. It's kind of the main thing that I'm thinking about. If I'm seeing a dog on a walk, I'm like, yeah, I want that dog to hang out with me. It's a little crazy, and that's just, my mind's always thinking about that now. I can't even really enjoy an outing out because I'm always looking at everybody's dogs and being like, yep, they probably need a psychologist now.
Mhm.
But the main thing is, yeah, calming the dogs down, but then also trying to kind of find out the puzzle pieces is what also my favorite part. And every dog is different. It's kind of like if a human goes to the gym, we're not all going to have the same workout. We're not all going to go want to hit the bench press. Some of us are not doing calisthenics, and like every dog really is different in that way too. So I love figuring out how a dog works and then teaching their owner, like, you don't have to do the classic A, B, and C with this dog. We can totally do, X, Y, Z with this dog and get the same goal that we're doing. So yeah,
Mhm.
the puzzle piece, kind of figuring out them and how they work, and teaching people that dogs are not a one size fits all kind of thing is also one of my favorite things. And then I would say the third part is really just my little kid self would be so happy that I am just hanging out with dogs all day. When I was a kid, I think I did say I wanted to have a dog farm in Australia. I'm pretty sure that's because I was obsessed with Steve Irwin. I don't think Australia is anything that I need to go or anywhere, but I definitely remember telling my dad that he would come help clean the dog's ears because I did not want to do that. And so
Mhm.
that was one of my goals when I was a kid. And so just knowing that, like, little 10-year-old Danny would be so kind of excited about what I'm doing is also kind of one of my favorite parts in general of just getting to do what I do. And when I tell people what I do, people are always like, you're so lucky. And sometimes I don't even know if I feel it as much as people tell me. And I really am super lucky to get to do what I do.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that we're all lucky and blessed the more we tell ourselves that we are lucky and blessed,
Yeah.
despite external situations, right? The more we train our brain to say we are and believe that we are, the more we are. So on one side of the coin, it's lucky, but it's like, also, what do you expect when you have a good mindset and a calm central nervous system? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm just
it really
saying.
does. You really get the rewards from it once you work on those things. And that's like, I think that's one of my favorite parts about working with dogs. When I first started this, I remember thinking, oh, I don't have to really work with people anymore. And I was kind of just over people at the time. And that was not the case because what I do is teach people how to work with their dogs. But I have enjoyed that process so much because those people are there willing to learn. They want to do kind of the same thing. And I'm not making them go home and do a yoga class, but I am teaching them to slow down with their dog. And that does kind of snowball into everything.
Hmm.
And I'll do yoga with my dogs while we're training, and have them being calm all around me and stuff. So I try to teach people that you can kind of live the same life with your dog. You don't have to be going all crazy, and you don't have to be running all fast. You don't have to lose your keys everywhere,
Yeah.
And so it is kind of been a fun thing of like being able to teach people through their dogs.
So I just want to throw this idea out there, and you might have already thought of this idea. But what if you did content where you were talking to, I don't know, either women or women and men both, and you were giving them like words of encouragement where, like, maybe kind of like I do, right? Like you're trying to help them with their mind and their thoughts and their nervous system. But your thing is you always have the dog around or a dog around you, and you always correlate just like in dog, or like that's a theme that you have,
Yeah, I need to have my little like yoga setup out there with the dogs. It's actually I can picture the whole content. It's actually great. I have I've been doing like car vlogging, so I'll set up my camera in the car and while I'm doing drives and I've got the dogs all crated up, I'll be talking about whatever's in my mind, and we're gonna launch like a Patreon page so people can just go on there and see all the content and listen and hear to all the things I have to talk about dogs. But I do like this added section of like the meditative kind of yoga portion with it. I think that would be great.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned that like part of it is you do enjoy helping people. Maybe in the past there was resistance, but you do enjoy helping people. And, if it's content, it's like, I don't know, if you're already doing it, why it could be something you could do that you could bring
No,
in.
it's a hundred
Or it
percent.
could be just like,
I'm always open to ideas. I
or
could use it for sure.
it could be maybe like once a week or something. You go Thursday tips with like about like mindset,
No,
and
that's
you got
cute.
your
I like
dog
it.
or whatever.
Like a Sunday, I could do a Sunday rest.
Yeah, yeah,
I like
and it's just like a little theme that you bring up here and there or something.
This
I
is
don't know.
smart. You're giving me more content, which really people want to see me more, and like I do a little bit, and I try to throw up the things when I can. And I honestly am just also really busy sometimes. We run a dog rescue also, and that takes a lot of my time.
Yeah,
And I probably should have waited to start like a passion project like that until I got the business more going. But there's all these things that people want to see me doing, and they probably would enjoy that a whole lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, since you are here, uh, might as well. Dude, I had no intention of asking you like dog advice, even though I have a dog and I love dogs.
Please
My
shoot these
whole
fire.
my whole thing was like, I want to learn about your story and like what got you into doing what you're doing and how that came to be, and just see where it goes. But yeah, hell, we're here. So, you mentioned earlier about like helping a dog be more calm or whatever. So my thought is fireworks. What do you recommend in those situations?
So, the main important thing to remember about a dog, which is different than humans, but we have our brains can work similarly, especially in trauma situations. Dogs are associative creatures. So, when they associate something with negativity for on and on, it's just going to be that. They might not even have an actual anxious feeling about whatever that is, but because now they've associated that one anxious moment with that thing, it just comes up every time they hear that thing. So, with anything that you're using, but especially fireworks or loud noises, I always tell people conditioning it to a new positive thing is the best thing you can do, and you want to start on the lowest level. So I always tell people if you can have it on your playing on your phone, your computer, something like that on a low level, you kind of have the pops and the booms going off in the background, and you're throwing treats and you're doing pepperoni and you're making it a whole big deal, and they don't really care about the phone because it's not that big of a deal, but you progressively make that louder and louder, and it's the same game. You bring
Huh.
out the cheese, the pepperoni, whatever it is, and the new association is when I hear this sound, I get really good food. I get all this fun stuff. We go on a walk. I get to do this exercise. He throws the ball for me, whatever it is. And that takes time, but as time goes on, then you can have them around the louder, bigger booms, and same thing, throw them in a piece of pepperoni and watch them kind of relax a little bit. I also am a
Huh.
huge fan of CBD, and there's a few good companies and a few companies that are not so great. I'm not paid by this company, but Lazarus Naturals is my favorite CBD company. They have
Okay.
great human stuff, but they have great pet CBD. And I always recommend giving your dog CBD 72 hours before any big event would happen. So if you know 4th of July is coming, 3 days before, we're doing some CBD every day up until that day. And then
Huh.
on that day, maybe double the dose. Your dog is definitely not going to get overdosed from CBD. It's absolutely impossible. It's just going to make them a little bit more calm. But then you do the same thing, all the positive stuff we've been doing, but they also have that kind of parasympathetic system slightly more relaxed just due to the CBD being in their system. And you
Hmm.
just kind of have that paired together, and you're going to have a dog that is going to be much more relaxed. I also always recommend to be playing some type of classical music on the days where really loud music is playing.
Uh-huh.
Beethoven and like Chopin, they've done like 150 studies, and though classical music or anything lo-fi, down tempo, something like that, calms a
Hmm.
dog's brain down way more than any other type of music. So both of my bunkhouses have that type of music playing 24/7. So the boarding dogs, all whatever. We live in the country, so sometimes people will shoot a gun out here or something like that. So, but the dogs cannot hear it, and they never do. And so, and then I also, before the days come, I am also given CBD. We do extra exercise, extra positive reinforcement, and loud the loud noises. And most of my dogs sleep pretty snoozely. I have a lot of dogs who come to me for high anxiety, and I have a pretty good system of getting them to just kind of relax during the big events. But playing some loud music can definitely help if they're not prepared for it, for sure. But I always recommend those things combined, CBD music and just building that new positive association with those sounds. And you'll totally get them over it. My puppy was like terrified of everything loud, and we've just done a lot of running over those things with treats and clickers and all stuff, and now she does it like no problem, and it's almost welcome to her now. She'll jump on everything loud because she knows she gets something for it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and thank you for that.
Of course.
I'm just curious as far as like the effort versus reward thing here on the one side of like and I get it makes sense conditioning them to be okay with it basically, right? um in terms of like what is the negative effect for the dog? I mean, is it okay for them to be in that kind of fight or flight state shake? I mean, we don't like seeing them like it obviously, but you
Yes.
know, if we feed them a CBD treat and they're shaking a little bit but they get through it, is that like negative for their,
It
for some?
really depends on like I mean if they're having such a moment where like a dog will self-harm or anything like that, but
uh
also you do have to let a dog sometimes be able to work through their emotions and realize that like, oh, I didn't die and nothing bad happened. And
that's kind
that's
of
where,
yeah, that's what I was
so it's
wondering.
like it's a double-edged sword. You don't want to leave a dog where they're freaking out too much, but you want to also make sure that you can positively reward all the good things. And that, a lot of that does come before those big moments. And a lot of the training that I do with dogs is slowing them down in general and just teaching them that when they hear something like that, nothing bad happens. My favorite tool is a clicker. Let me grab this real quick because I have one right here. I always have them everywhere. But this little handy dandy tool right here, it's
Uh-huh.
a
Yeah.
clicker you can get off Amazon. And what I do with all my dogs just woke up. They all looked at me because they all know that this means food though. And so what I do
Oh.
is I click, treat, and I do that game for a couple days, a month. My dogs have been doing it for years now, but when they hear it, they know good things are happening. And so if something scary happens, I click and they come get their treat and they totally forget about that scary thing. But I've also
Mm,
done a lot of work getting this tool to mean something different. And then we're kind of disrupting them essentially of like, okay, screw that. This is way more fun. So if you
yeah.
can have something like that built up before an event happens, you have a way to go, okay, well, no, that sucked, but I like that, so that was a good job. And when they do relax, we click or anything like that to like mark the good behavior. So there's different ways that you can do it, but you also, yeah, don't want to leave a dog where they're gonna go crazy to the point where they think that that is the way that they want to be. But when they are relaxed, we reward them for that, and then they start getting that mindset of like, oh, okay, when I'm relaxed, everything is normal. I get what I want. I get the food. I get to come out of my crate or whatever it is. But when we let dogs move in a more anxious state, they just start picking that up, and that just starts becoming their more mode of transportation. It's kind of like humans. We just think it serves us, and we
Mm,
just start being anxious, you know, and we think that we're going to survive for some reason being that way. But there's no tiger chasing us, and we don't need to panic about it. It's fine, you know. And the dogs kind of start to feel the same way. They're like, "What the? Why is that happening?" And it's like, you don't have to worry about it. It's fine. But it is a lot of time of just teaching them that being calm gets them what they want, and being in that anxious state isn't going to get them out of anything, essentially. So it
yeah.
is a tricky thing, but it is what I work with the most, is dogs with separation anxiety and anxiety in general.
Okay. Well, hell yeah. Okay, I got one more question. Dogtown. Just curious if there is something like this that you could share. Is there anything that top of mind is something that a lot of people think about dogs that you're like that's not true?
Yeah, I'm gonna screw everyone up with this one. So when a dog comes and they lean on you, or they
Mm-hmm.
put their paw on you and they just come up and climb up on top of you, that generally is not them cuddling you. Most
Bullshit.
scenarios, most wait, hear me out.
I'm
So if a
just kidding.
dog comes and lays next to you, but they don't push on you, you know what I mean? Or if
Mm-hmm.
they come and they lay on you and you've invited them up, that's a
Mm-hmm.
different thing. But if you've
Okay.
done none of that and your dog just comes and just lays on you, and your dog just comes and pushes you over, or you're at the dog park and they're nervous and they come and they do the lean against you on your leg,
Uh-huh.
that is telling you, I don't feel comfortable and I'm the boss, right? So I'm going to claim you and I'm going to tell you that I'm the leader of this pack. And you go, okay, yeah, you're the leader of the pack when you let them lean on you. So I have to teach clients all the time, especially with anxious dogs. If they're doing any of that type of behavior on the couch, anything when you're out of the park, you lean back into them just a little bit. And if most of the times they'll just go settle right next to you, or they'll go walk away completely because they actually didn't want to cuddle you. It's a dog's thing. If you watch wolves, they do it all the time. They're trying to figure out who the leader of the pack is to make sure they're safe. And we tell them they're not safe by letting them do that. And we tell them, you're the pack leader. I will not have your back when something happens. You got this. And they go, I don't know what to do. Okay. Well, I'm going to do it though. And that's where the reactive comes. That's where the aggression comes. That's where the anxiety comes. So I
Mm-hmm.
have to teach people all the time, that's cuddling. That is not. That's claiming. And that's just, it's not a bad thing. They do love you. And that's why they're doing it. They want to just, you're a part of their pack. It is still a great thing. I cried when I first found this information out because I went home and I realized all my dogs were doing this to me. So it's just one of those things that people just think, oh my God, how cute, how cute. And I'll be out there and I'm like, your dog has anxiety, it's a little fearful, it's nipped at someone before. Yeah. It's like, it's because they're just not comfortable and you're not telling them that you're the leader. So I always just tell people, just slightly lean into them. Or just, and I do send off. So dogs in the yard come and lean off me all the time, and I just kind of shuffle them with my feet. I'm just like walk into them a little bit, and then they go. All of a sudden, they'll play with a dog for the first time ever. They've never played with a dog before. They'll go use the bathroom when they were anxious and not using the bathroom. I see crazy things happen when I just tell a dog to go be a dog, and that you don't need me. It's okay. But it is weird because dogs just are conditioned, and we're conditioned to nurture them. And with
Uh-huh.
children, they're going to run to us and say, "Mom, we're going to pick them up." So when a dog does it, it's just natural for us to go, "Oh my God, it's okay." But it's
Mm-hmm.
actually the worst thing you can do with most dogs in scenarios. There's a slight way that we can communicate with dogs and tell them, I actually 100% have you covered, and I still am going to cuddle you and love you and give you everything you need, but you don't have to do this push and this pull of who's in charge here because I am in charge. But just people don't see that. And that did really mess my world up when I learned it, but it's changed my dynamic, and my dogs are still the most spoiled love dogs. They still come up on my bed and cuddle with me, but it's a much more not aggressive. I don't own you. I don't own the whole thing. I'm not going to pick on this dog. I won't bark at this thing. And it's changed everything for all dogs. And a lot of the times when I have a dog come, I tell them, we're going to take them off the bed and the couch for a little bit. And then when they can get those privileges back, it's because they've earned them and they respect you and they know you're the leader. And that is where a lot of behaviors just come from for dogs of just not knowing where they are in the pack, and they just feel uncomfortable about it.
Yeah, yeah. Man, maybe we could do another one at some point where we really dive deeper into dogs.
Yeah, I would love to.
Again, like
There's a
I
lot of
know
stuff I'd love to share.
I knew it was a part of your thing, and I knew that was something that we had, but it just wasn't my real thought process for this. But now I'm like, we should probably do like a whole thing on dogs, maybe at
I'm
some point.
certified in dog
Um,
psychology, which is like a little bit different than regular training. And like a lot of people just think it's like sit and stay and, place and all these things, but it's about how your dog feels when they do those things. When you say sit, do they sit on the first time, or do you have to ask them 10 times, or do you have to bribe them with something?
Right.
That matters, you know. And
Yeah.
dogs, all those things we don't think about, you know. We just think the dog needs to be obedient, but does the dog feel good about those things? Because I have obedient dogs come all the time that are still reactive, still fearful, whatever, but they know sit, they know stay, they know all these things, but they don't feel good when they do it, you know? And so that's where I tell people all the time, the psychological aspect, it is a lot like humans. If you don't feel good doing your job or what you're doing, you're not going to do a good job at it. You're going to be reactive at the grocery store, you're going to
Right.
road rage a little bit, whatever it is. So that's where I teach that to dogs also. It's like you don't have to be the road rager.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, I do have one more dog question.
Yeah.
So, when you have a dog on the leash and you're walking around, maybe the local market, she sees another dog, and when they're close, she gets that, what do you call, leash aggression. When in a dog park, she's fine, but
So similar thing, she's associated the leash with that aggression. So when the leash comes on, she goes, okay, we're gonna go do this job now. We're gonna go, when we see this dog, dad, we fuck him up, right? And that's her job in her mind when the leash gets clipped on. The leash clips off, she's off duty, job doesn't happen anymore. It's just that association with the leash. And that's where I teach people you have to make a new association with it. And that's where I make people's world real small at first when we're starting training. We're not going on the big walks anymore. It's just in front of your house. And until we get the positive what we want, and then we can reinforce that. And then they go, oh, this is the job. I'm supposed to do this, not that. And then when they learn that, you can take them back out to the big world and practice a little bit more. But every time your dog gets to practice that, it's another tool in their toolbox of, I like that, that works. It's a dopamine hit. We're going to do that
yeah,
again. And
yeah,
so that's why I tell people, stop the big walks, stop doing all those things, try to practice right in your immediate environment, get the clicker, get the treats, make sure you're able to correct and guide them through that. If you see a dog and they mess up, right the second afterwards, if they connect with you, reward them for that, reward them for that. And then they're going to start rephrasing what the job is. Now when they see the dog, oh, I'm supposed to connect with dad, not go for the dog. And then your walk becomes a whole different thing. When the leash comes on, it means a different job. But it is different for every dog. I had a Saint Bernard, one of the hardest dogs I've ever trained for reactivity. We put a backpack on him and he stopped.
hmm
He needed like a different job to do. He didn't care about his humans at all. So we needed something for him to do. We loaded up a backpack on him because they are kind of dogs that are supposed to carry around things, whatever. He does not care about any dog anymore when his backpack is on because
yeah,
that's his job. So
yeah,
you just have to kind of give them a new job and associate the leash that doesn't mean that. And for now, it just for her does mean, let's go be a dick, and they might not even
yeah,
think that in their head. It's just fun for them, just like we do any adrenaline rushing stuff. For us, we just feel something when we do it. Dogs don't think that they're doing anything bad when they're doing that. It just feels good to them. They're just like, yeah, we did that. The dog said, we said screw you to that dog, and it felt great.
yeah, yeah. Man, okay. So I would love to do that at some point, if you're up for it.
Yeah, totally, let's do
Few
it. We can
weeks
teach
or a
a
month
bunch
or
of
two
people
or
about a
something
bunch
like
of
that.
stuff. I'm sure they need it.
We'll really dive into the dog thing. I think that would be good. Um, Currently, what all do you offer, to your community yeah, what all
So
do you
we
offer?
do the way that it's dog training, boarding, and daycare, but they can only board and come to daycare if they've either A, been through our training program, or B, have been trained to our standards where we feel like they're going to be social with other dogs, social with humans, and not going to basically make anybody's life a living hell here, And
Mhm.
so I need them to be safe, and I need them to be generally able to listen to commands. And if they do those things, they can come board, hang out, come to daycare. That's totally fine. Generally, almost every time, even when they say their dog is that way, they play too rough. They don't respond if you are trying to get them out, and that can become a problem. So one of the things I teach is an off command, and so dogs need to be able to have a disengagement command when they come here in case there is a dog scuffle, anything like that. That's how we prevent that from happening. So I do essentially training, daycare, and boarding, and then we have the rescue side of it. We have a rescue house here where we basically save dogs from euthanasia in the local area. We save everything from puppies to bigger dogs. We get them their medical care. We do a little bit of training with them, and then we adopt them out. But they all live on site with the boarding and training dogs as well. So we have, volunteers here, employees here, just a little bit of everything running around, trying to make sure all the dogs. We're a small batch facility, so we never go above a certain number of dogs to make sure that every dog gets the quality care that they need. That's what I
Mhm.
saw a lot of places do wrong is the money was coming in, so they started doubling the dogs. But then there was injuries and dog deaths, and so many
Mhm.
things. And unfortunately, the boarding and training industry is unregulated. Anybody can do it. I have started this off my home property, and nobody's ever come and checked if the dogs are okay here, even though that they
Mhm.
are.
Mhm.
And that's a huge thing. That one of the reasons I started this was to make sure I can offer a safe place for people to take their dogs, just because there are so many people who are unfortunately just taking hand over fist money for dogs when that's really not going to give the dog the quality care that they need. So that's all that I offer, but we basically do a little bit of everything.
And what's your local area?
I'm south of Austin.
Okay, and so in terms of adoptions, do you do adoptions like in that local area, or do people come
We
from
do.
different?
We actually sometimes do send dogs out of state. We do not cover transport costs, so it just basically the person has to just love that dog enough to want to pay to get the dog there. We did just send a puppy to New York City, or maybe it was upstate New York, and she met him here while she was visiting for a bachelorette trip. Fell in love, wanted the dog, paid a decent amount of money, and flew him up there. And
Yeah,
he's with his mom now, living his life. And I have sent a few dogs to other states, but it really depends on how much they, really, really want and connect with that dog. We still have to do a lot of work to make sure it's the right home fit, because we kind of do home checks and stuff. So we have to do like a FaceTime kind of home thing and make sure all that's good. But we've had a lot of good luck with out of state adoptions. And unfortunately, Texas is just overrun with dogs. So if we can't get dogs out of here, we try to.
yeah, yeah. Okay. And what is your vision for the future? I'm just curious. Like, what do you aspire to do next?
I have a really big goal, and I don't know if I'll get there. And it's kind of one of those things where it is just one foot in front of the other, and we'll see. I would love to franchise Dogs Landing Play and Train to where there are multiple places in the country that people can get structured boarding, training, and daycare, and know that their dog is going to be not just well taken care of, but also easy for them to handle at home in so many ways. And what I see so many people do wrong is kind of take dogs into a daycare boarding setting and then just send them home, crazy from running around all day or whatever. And our clients love that that's not what they get. They essentially get a better trained dog whenever their dog leaves here. So I'd love to start something like that, but I also want to partner with veterinarians is my main goal. Dogs are so anxious at the vet, and there's literally no reason for it. It's only because they've made an association that that's a place that they don't want to be. A dog can be fine almost anywhere else, and you take them to the vet, they'll have a whole moment about it. So I would love for trainers in general to partner with vets, so that way there's place beds and training and structure offered to the dogs coming in, and the anxiety would be much less, medication would not be given as much. Obviously the veterinarians would probably hate that, I think, because we all know like the pharma system is a part of everything,
Mm.
is part of the veterinary world as well. And so I'd love to see a huge difference in just care for dogs in general, and I think being a part of the veterinary world is how that's done. So someday I'd like to infiltrate it.
Yeah, I mean, just getting to hang out with you this time and learning more about your journey and what drives you and everything. I would say that all of those things are very, very possible for you. I think that it seems like there's a lot that's driving your train. So I don't think your train's going to pull over.
I
So
appreciate that. It feels, yeah, very good. And like I'll have moments where the doubt or whatever comes in, but generally I just have this inner knowing that we're on the right path, and we just keep
yeah,
putting the right foot forward, and it's going to work out. My general rule is the golden rule. You treat people how you want to be treated, and it's worked out for me so far.
yeah, yeah. There's something to it. The good Zig Ziglar, the great Zig Ziglar says, if you can just help enough other people get what they want, you inevitably get what you want. I like to add to that, but it's not about what you want, and it never was. And that's the funny part, which if you
Yep.
told that to me 8 years ago, I'd be like, get out of here, you fucking wacko. You know what I mean? Like, but that's the truth though.
I love
So,
that.
so as far as what's next for you in terms of content, like what's the goal there? I'm just curious.
Really, we just started getting to the point where we've got a couple thousand followers on Instagram. We just got into the TikTok space. We're just kind of figuring out YouTube a little bit. We're about to launch Patreon. So I'm just trying to hit all angles, and even some things you brought up are probably good things I need to think about, and I've gotten so many advice from so many different people. And I honestly, the tech world in general is something that I am not meant to be a part of. I just don't. Computers are tough for me, I swear. I can train your dog, no problem, but don't sit me in front of a computer all day. I will struggle for sure. So it's just navigating all of that and figuring out how we can kind of take advantage of all those things. But monetarily, I think that is the next big step. And so I'm really focused on trying to make sure that all of that stuff kind of brings us what we need. So yeah, we're really just going to launch this Patreon and hopefully get all these other things loaded up with more content and just see where it goes and hope that we hit those magic numbers someday.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. All right. So if people want to check out more of you and what you do, where would they go to do that?
So we do have a Facebook, which is called Dogs Landing Play and Train. You can also find us on Instagram, which is at Dogs Landing Co. We also have our rescue page, which is completely separate, but has all of our rescue dogs and missions on there. It is a 501c3 nonprofit. We just got our 501c3 status, and we're really, really proud of that. And you can follow
Congratulations.
that at the Dogs Landing House. And so we have a few different places that you can go. My website is dogslandingco.com. You can find everything on that website, all my services, all links to everything. We have a little blog on there that talks about aggression and so many different things. And then you'll see like a lot of our content be plugged in as well. So that's where you can find me.
Beautiful. Just so I understand, you said dogs landing plane,
Play and train.
plane and train,
So
plane,
PLAY and train. So play like play with your dog.
play and train. Okay.
Yes. The
I don't
keys
know
that
why I
we
was
do
like, are you
both
saying
here.
plane train? You know?
Nope. The keys that we do both here. We train the dogs and we play with them.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. I love it. Dogs landing, play, and train.
Yeah,
Cool.
and Dogs Landing is a little moniker off of Game of Thrones. I was obsessed at the time, and
Okay.
they were on the way to King's Landing, and I was writing down all these things, and they sounded so dumb. It was like Holly's Paws, whatever. And I was like, you know what? What if it was Dog's Landing instead of King's Landing? And it just stuck. And so
Yeah.
now that's kind of how it's saying a lot. Nobody questions it, but if anybody does, that's where it's from.
I love it. I love the origin story. I think it's a great origin story because it doesn't stick out at you. You know, it's like it can stand on its own without knowing the origin story. But when you
Yep.
tell the origin story, it's like, oh, that's cool. You know.
And there are some people who get it, and I do definitely like, my name is Danielle. I go by Danny, and in that show, she was Queen Daenerys. She went by Danny, and so there was definitely this part of it where I was like, yeah, this is me.
Hell yeah, that's amazing. All right, cool. Well, Danny, thank you so much for hanging out today, and yeah, we'll definitely do another one at some point soon where we just dive into dogs because
Yeah, let's
I
do some
started like
dog
questions were
psychology
just
stuff.
coming up, you know, but we need more time for that, you know.
For sure.
So
A lot more
so
time. I've got a lot to talk about. Well,
beautiful,
thank you,
beautiful.
Phil. This was really great.
My pleasure. Do you mind hanging out for just 2 seconds after we
Not
wrap
at
this
all.
up? Okay, cool. Everybody else, thank you so much for hanging out. If you want to hang out more or learn more about Danny, check out the links below. And obviously, if you want to hang out with me, there's a link down there for me. Otherwise, see y'all later.